Thank you. It's great to be here. I haven't been in this conference before, and I must say this is a lovely group of people, so thank you for having me. My name is Chris Koronidis. I'm a clinical lecturer of cardiology at Oxford, but I'm here with my capacity as a former editorial fellow for the New England Journal of Medicine. And I'm going to talk to you about our study on how research abstracts change between submission and publication. So I think everybody in this room is going to agree that editorial review is the cornerstone of publishing, scientific publishing, because it ensures that research adheres to the highest quality standards. But how much does a research abstract actually change from initial submission to publication in the public domain? And are these changes substantive? Do they mean anything? And does the level of change, if any change happens, depend on general characteristics such as impact factor or open access status? So our aim with this body of work was to investigate how much change occurs in an abstract from submission to publication. And we focus on abstracts, if you're wondering, for two reasons. First, we think that they are the most visible and widely read part of a research article. And secondly, because review of abstract was much more feasible in terms of what we did here as compared to full manuscripts. And we began our journey with all original research articles that were submitted to the New England Journal of Medicine, or NEJM, in the year of 2022. And using author names, we searched PubMed for articles within 2 years of submissions. And then after that initial search, 4 physician reviewers reviewed the results to match the published abstracts with the submitted abstracts. So in 2022, there were 2,756 submissions to NEJM, and we managed to match 1,360 of those with PubMed records within 2 years. Our inability to identify versions of many of the original submitted abstracts may relate to authorship changes, or because we know that there's a tail, sort of an extended time to publication, as we've seen that in internal audits that we've done at the journal. Sometimes papers take more than 2 years to appear in the public domain. Now, first, as a first step to quantify similarity, we used a similarity score. You can think about it about this as the technology that is used in plagiarism software. So in this particular instance, this thing generated a score ranging from 0 to 1, and a score of 1 essentially means that the two abstracts were identical, and a score of 0 means that they were quite dissimilar. But aside from generating a score for the pairs of abstracts that we evaluated, we wanted to understand what sort of changes had been made and were those changes substantive. So to do this, we reviewed the pairs of abstracts coming from randomized controlled trial reports only, and we assessed those for changes across 4 key domains that we thought of as really important to represent what we thought of as substantive change. So these 4 domains were first trial design, where we looked at changes in reporting of the trial design, the randomization methods, and the sample size. Second domain was primary outcome, where we looked at the definition of the primary outcome in the body of the abstract test and the accuracy of the reporting of the estimate of the effect. Third domain was adverse events, and here we looked for completeness and neutrality in the reporting of safety data. And the final and fourth domain was conclusion. And here we looked at whether the conclusions are appropriately supported by the results and the data presented in the abstract without bias or misinterpretations. And this analysis generated an ordinal score, which we called the TPAC score, that ranged from -4 to +4. So a score of +4 indicated that the published version of the abstract was improved across all the 4 domains that I just mentioned. A score of 0 indicated that there wasn't really any change between the 2 versions. And then a negative score indicated that we thought that the original submission was better in those domains compared to the published version. Now, going back to the similarity score that I talked about at the beginning, the median similarity score between submitted and published abstracts was 0.7, meaning that Most abstracts did change, but with great variation amongst journals, as you can see in the figure. And remember here, lower scores mean more change, more editing, if you like. Now, abstracts published in the 5 general medicine journals with a journal impact factor above 50 per the 2023 Clarivate report. And bear in mind, this is not the latest one, because we did that before the latest Clarivate report was published. So these were the Lancet, NEJM, JAMA, BMJ, and Nature Medicine, had significantly lower similarity scores compared to the rest of the journals. So taking a step back and trying to think of these results, we have shown here that the abstract text changes significantly between submission and publication. But one is left wondering, what does this mean? Could it all be grammatical corrections? We know that large circulation journals employ manuscript editors, and quite a few of you are amongst us today that do sort of improve language with no real or sort of impactful change to the actual message that is being communicated. So to have a look to sort of dissect that a bit more, let's see what our TPAC results show. But before we do that, let's focus on a few examples. So for this, the qualitative comparisons, as I said earlier, we focused on the abstracts from randomized controlled trials, and this sample size was 496 abstracts. So for domain 1, as you can see here, the trial design, you can see an improvement here where the degree of randomization is being mentioned. For the primary outcome, the second domain, you can see a clearer definition of the primary outcome that includes the timing and the scale that was used to measure the primary outcomes that was not present in the submitted version of the abstract. For domain 3, you'll see that we saw that quite often abstracts did not report adverse events, but those appeared in the published version. And finally, for the conclusions, we can see an important improvement here that reflects a non-inferiority design of the trial that was missed in the submitted version. So moving on to results, we saw that a third of abstracts had a TPAC score of 0, meaning no substantive changes, the big column in the middle. And then interestingly, 59.1% of abstracts had a positive TPAC score. And the domain that was most commonly revised or changed were conclusions. And that makes sense because, as you all know, conclusions are the most difficult to get right. So they often need a lot of attention in terms of editing. And now going back to a comparison with the 5 general medicine journals with a high impact factor, we can see here that 72.1% of abstracts improved in at least one domain for these high impact journals, as compared to 48.3% of abstracts published in other journals. And this difference was consistent across all the 4 domains of our TPAC score. And again, conclusion changes were the most different, 48% versus 27%. And then additionally, when we looked at open access status, more than half of abstracts published in non-open access journals, and we used the Scopus database field to sort of identify and define which journals were open access, had substantive improvement, whereas most published in open access journals showed no substantive changes. So to conclude, peer review and editorial processes result in frequent improvements to research abstracts of RCTs, with 59% showing improvement. The most frequent improvements are seen in the abstract conclusions. Abstracts are more frequently improved in the highest impact factor general medicine journals, and we hope that our results highlight that substantial revisions and improvements that occur between submission and publication do support the value of editorial oversight. You can read more about our results in a report that was published simultaneously with this conference in Annals of Internal Medicine. I want to thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Chris, for that very interesting presentation. Any contributions? Yes, sir.
Markus Krivars, Helsinki, Finland. Thank you. Very nice presentation and interesting results. Journals may have different requirements of the abstract, different wording. You can have 250 words or 300 words, and the headlines may differ. So that may prompt changes to the abstract you may not include all the things about bias and so forth. Do you think that that could account for some of the changes? Or did you specifically look at things, a sentence that reported something in the primary and then compare that to a similar sentence in the revised version?
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. So I think I agree with you that giving authors a structured way of reporting their abstract may help and prompt them into including all the necessary information in the abstract. For the way we did it when we were analyzing, we sort of blinded ourselves completely to which one was the published or the submitted version, and we also stripped the abstracts of all the subheadings or editing that could potentially have happened. So the reviewers, when they were sort of evaluating this, they were only looking at a paragraph, like a continuous paragraph of continuous text. And I think for those domains, like the sort of the details and the specific characteristics that we were looking for, I think those are very important to any kind of reporting of any kind of randomized controlled trial. So we would expect those to be in the abstract of even journals that do not have structured abstracts at all, like Nature, for example. They don't have any subheadings, right? But we would expect the sample size, the randomization method, or the number of patients, or the adverse events to be reported in all abstracts in literature.
Yeah, at the back there.
Malichki Mario, Stanford University. We have done a systematic review of all the studies that looked at changes, and around 11 studies have looked at and classified if the conclusions change from, let's say, superior to inferior, or drug works, does not work. Have you been able to classify that level of change of the conclusions? Because these 11 studies indicate only 2% of conclusions actually changed the direction of the results. The rest is adding a few of limitations or toning down a little bit, but not actually changing the results. And we're able to maybe also look at how many actually increased in the sample size or the primary outcomes themselves.
Sure.
The number of primary outcomes measured.
Yeah. Thank you for this. This is quite interesting, but it's sort of a different research question. I would be very worried if a paper changed the direction of its result between submission and publication. Our aim with this was sort of to evaluate and quantitate how much more accurate and how much more objective the reporting was between submission and publication. So we didn't look at what you're saying, whether there was any change in the direction of the results. But as is shown in the example that I showed you earlier, like we sort of looked for toning down of the results or conclusions actually representing what the data presenting was telling us.
Oh, there was a gentleman here. Okay. Since we have a bit of time, did you manage to tease out what are the factors between the open access versus non-open access? Able to tease out what you think could have contributed to that difference?
I mean, well, thank you for this question. It's really interesting. I mean, we can only speculate, right? Because I think many people have different opinions about what is driving that. I think to me, the resources that are available to a journal may play a role in this. So journals that are able to employ professional editors would have the ability to sort of appraise a study in much more depth. So potentially this is reflected, some of the changes that we see here reflect that. But as I said, again, I don't want to draw conclusions and tell you something definitive because it's not, I can only speculate what I think is going on here.
Yeah, go ahead, the lady at the front.
Veronique Kermer with PLOS. Right. Open access is a business model. It's not an editorial model. There are open access journals that have professional editors as well. So I just want us to be a little bit more precise when we do these kinds of comparisons. And by the way, I can't access your paper because it's behind a paywall.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. You're right. Well, the open access was a secondary sort of objective, was not our primary objective. Our primary objective was comparing the high sort of impact factor general medicine journals and how those compare with the rest of them. But I take your point, and again, as you noticed, we didn't present any p-values for any of that because we want to avoid any discussion about statistical significance. So you just take it all as descriptive.
Yes, sir, at the back.
Hello, I'm Manuel here from Karolinska in Stockholm. I was wondering about the ones that were substantially better as submissions rather than final results or what was published. Did you look at them at all? It would be very interesting to know how how were they ruined
Yeah.
in a way.
No, we did not. That was not part of our statistical analysis plan when we were putting the study together. So we didn't want to do lots of data mining and data handling post hoc. Those were a very small percentage, as you see, and they happened because, as I said earlier, reviewers were blinded to which version of the abstract was the published or the submitted one. So as part of the process, they were asked to determine which one they thought was the submitted and the published version. I don't have an answer as to why, what happened there, where these abstracts come from or which journals they come from.